Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, and I am with my amazing co-host, Melody Brue, and this is the 6-5 podcast. Mel, we made it 8 episodes. I survived 3 events. You survived 1, right? And in fact, I think you're still in New York City.
I am, but this is not the 6-5 podcast. This is the Hot
Did I
Desk
say the
podcast.
6-5? I am so sorry. I thought I had it all together. This is the Hot Desk podcast. This is the very focused, smarter people podcast. But no, thank you for that. Maybe we're going to make you the host now.
No,
But
that's all
hey,
right.
if it is your first time here, I mean, we're talking all things modern work. I mean, whether it's collaboration, whether it's productivities, tools, trends, trajectory of the industry, really the next new normal. And the great part of this, it kind of changes every week, and there's just so much passion about this topic out there. I mean, we have content for like 5 years, so I hope I last that long. That's for
It does
sure.
keep changing.
Hey, we're going to talk about publicly traded companies. Don't take any of it as investment advice. So let's dive in. I think we have a great show for you. We're talking Microsoft, their AI event. We're talking Cadence and their racial equity investment. You wrote a great article on that, great video as well. And we're going to do hot or not. I want to let you know this was Melody adding this, not me. Lazy girl jobs. But hey, let's dive in here. You and I were both front and center at this amazing announcement. I think maybe there were 10, 15 analysts and maybe 50 press. A very hard event to get into, and 2 more insights and strategy folks were there on site.
Yeah, great event. Really very exciting, and I was very honored to be there. Got to meet the CEO of Microsoft, which my kids thought was very cool.
Heck yeah,
Um,
you did.
I actually
Handshake.
thought it was very cool too. I'm not trying to be cool about
Yes.
that. I thought it was very cool, but my kids thought so too.
He is one of the hardest CEOs to get time with. So
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go through kind of all of what happened. There was a lot of announcements, but one of the things that I think is really important to talk about is that he is a hard CEO to get time with, and he sat down with us and talked to us about strategy, talked to us about just everything that's changing in AI, how quickly things have changed since the first time he got on stage and talked. You were there in Washington when he first got on stage and talked about Bing Chat. And at the time, when I look back at the things that we talked about and the things that we wrote back then, the way that we talked about large language models, the way that we talked about any sort of generative AI was almost like we were explaining it to a child when you look back at it, because it was so new for everybody. And now it's so common. And Microsoft is actually just making it more common and more accessible to everybody with a lot of these announcements. So it was everything. I mean, it was Windows 11 update with Copilot in Windows. There were some device updates of new devices. I mean, it was kind of not all over the place in terms of scatter, but it was all over the place, from updates to new things, new devices, new products within products. So I think the big standouts for me, if we're talking about just modern work, were of all of the things that are available in the Windows 11 update. There's a lot of things for creativity, paint, photo, snipping tools, things that kind of give it like almost an Adobe Light like functionality.
I think that's a fair characteristic. Yeah.
And I think it's really important to note that there's a huge creator economy out there right now. People are making a lot of money as a side hustle, making a lot of money as their main job. We're not talking about just marketing teams. We're talking about people who are creators on, social media and various platforms, e-commerce platforms, that it's a, very large industry, and they're making these tools that make things like putting images into just a Word document, make with a chat in a chat box, makes that so much easier. Imagine like not being, when you're trying to create an image and having to, not everybody can use Adobe Illustrator. Not everybody has, access to all of these images, and you can just say like, create an image for this, and it reads into the content of your document and creates an image that will match up with that document. So there's a lot of things for creators. And then I think the other really important thing was just this concept of one Copilot. So
Yes.
first, we have to talk about copilots, and everybody says Copilot. I like to say Microsoft has the capital C Copilot. They do have a little bit of a branding issue here because everybody has since, they can't trademark that. But every company now uses the term Copilot because it is a really great way to talk about how an AI assistant is going to help you, because it's not autopilot, it's a copilot. But the capital C Copilot, when we're talking about Microsoft, rather than having a Copilot for Word and a Copilot for every single app and that you have, basically it's now a Copilot across all of your Microsoft 365, all of your apps, and devices, so that Copilot kind of gets to know you. So much so that in Outlook, Copilot can now write an email in your voice,
Right.
which I think that's just the start of it. So that, what is it called? There's a name, like Sound Like Me. It's called Sound Like Me.
Sound Like Me, right.
And they're starting with that in Outlook. But when you think about that, this is a really powerful thing, because if you've ever used any of these, like where, most tools now have it, where it's like suggest a reply. Well, they're horrible. Everybody thinks AI is so smart. It's really not. And it doesn't sound like you. And I find if I ever try that, I will spend more time making it sound like me than I would just writing the email to begin with, because it's so robotic. It's like if you were to send me an email like, hey, we have a podcast this afternoon, it would respond like, thank you, Patrick, for your kind email reminding me of our meeting this afternoon. It's just, it doesn't sound like you. So the fact that they've figured out a way to pick up on your tone and even sign it the way that you would sign an email. We're starting with Outlook, but that means it will be able to write documents in your tone. I mean, there's I think a lot of power in that. I'm excited about that. So Business Chat, which was announced in March, is now Microsoft 365 Chat. There's so, like, I don't even know where to start. And then I think another really great thing is they're starting to test a consumer version. So a lot of this, the chatbot and Copilot is aimed at business and enterprise customers. It's $30 per user per month on top of your Microsoft 365 subscription. But now they're starting to test a consumer version. So that means it's really going to be in the hands of everybody. So productivity for life. It's not just like for one, kind of zone in work or whatever. It's across the web. It's across your apps. It's across your work data. It's going to get to know you. It's a little creepy in a good way, I guess.
So technically, there's more than one Copilot. Just to put it out there, the key here is it's a singular experience that,
yes,
if you're using Copilot for consumer that's called Copilot, is going to be a similar experience to M365 Copilot. The data sets are not blended, okay? And that's by design to keep corporate information separated from personal information in a very similar way that corporations firewall employees' phones. So technically, it is more than one Copilot, but the experience is the same, and that's important. At some point, maybe, probably not, the data sets will cross each other, but there is going to be a different Copilot for Dynamics 365 applications. Okay, that where it's more CRM focused, but the experience will be the same, and that's the key here. The biggest thing for me is this being integrated into Windows, right? And we can't. I mean, there are not 2 billion, but almost 2 billion active users on Windows. When you add Microsoft 365, you get, I think, to 2.5 billion. The scale is crazy, and this is where Microsoft is most unique, particularly on the business side and the productivity side. I do expect Google to, is probably the closest proximity to this, with their strength being primarily on the consumer side.
Hmm.
But obviously, with Workspace, which we use back and forth with Microsoft 365, is going to be a real player. The other thing that really struck me is their ability to pull in smartphone information. I've been
Hmm.
on Windows, and sure, I play around with Macs, but there's a program inside. I think it's called Your Phone now. It's had three different names: My Phone, Your Phone. Maybe it's just called Phone. That will pull in text and iMessages. And so this is something I use every day in Microsoft, starting Windows Photos, which is pull in everything that I took from my iPhone. So within about 15 seconds of taking a picture on my iPhone, it just shows up like it does on a Mac, but
Hmm.
this is going cross platform. And I think that's very powerful and something that everybody needs to keep their eyes on, that to have full context and the best context, you need data from pretty much everywhere. Final comment that I'll make is on where this AI actually takes place. Now, in the end, consumers don't care where it's taking place unless they don't have to pay more for it. And whether it's coming off the device or whether it's coming out of the cloud, maybe with the exception that you don't always have very good connectivity, which is why we're still not painting interfaces in the cloud that Sun Microsystems had thought about with the NC device. That just never ended up happening because the robustness of what was happening on the endpoint. It's the reason why we have software on an iPhone, right? You could paint the interface with the network, right? But it's just too slow and it costs too much money. It's not a good experience. So when Microsoft alluded to, and I'll say the breadcrumbs was running these workloads locally, right? We saw the high-end Surface Laptop Studio 2 running LLMs locally, okay?
Hmm.
And that's using a discrete NPU from Intel. The next generation of Intel products will be integrated inside the device itself, so getting a much lower power. But they flirted this with idea, and an interview that I did on the 6.5, the 6.5, with
The actual
the
6.5.
CTO there, talked about this notion of hybrid compute, where the compute
Hmm.
happens in the best place according to the user. But great event, so much to talk about. Looking forward to your write ups, and I'm probably going to write something up as well. So let's move to
Yeah.
the next topic. And that was not only a project, but some research that you did on Cadence investing money in racial equity. And how does this align again with the Hot Desk podcast? Maybe you can explain to users.
Well, so part of the modern work vertical is DEI and ESG. And so this is, if you look at this, it is really part of their diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion program. But what I think is really interesting about this is that it didn't come out of a like CSR program or even a DEI program. It came from the office of the CFO. And really,
Interesting.
what a big part of modern work is how people feel about where they work. It's how people feel about what the DEI programs are, what the company is doing to give back. And Cadence really does a lot of this. But again, what I think was interesting about this is that it did come from the CFO. And John Wall is the CFO at Cadence. And think about a CFO of a 63 billion, I think is what their market cap is right now, company. This guy faces the street every quarter. He gets the hard questions. He is the most lovely person I have had a conversation with. Just a giver and so sweet. And he talked about all the different CFOs that he talks to. Um, he mentioned Tarek, who's the new CEO at Ring Central, who he had input on this and who you know very well, I know. And it's like it was sort of a nice conversation to think of these CFOs, CEOs who sit around and actually talk about how they're going to change the world, not just how they're going to make their revenue and answer to the street. But the way that they did it also is interesting, is it wasn't just a donation, right? So they took a $50 million investment, and it's in a fund managed by the Royal Bank of Canada. It's their global asset management group. And so basically they lend this money out, and they can lend it out over and over again. So they are getting a return on this money. So it's a smart investment, but at the same time, they're able to provide loans to small businesses. I think a lot of it was for affordable housing, promoting home ownership, and supporting small businesses. So I think it's just a really neat program. They've actually said they're going to up their investment as the company's market cap increases. And they've said that they want other companies to come along with them. They don't want to just like get the credit for doing this. They want it to be kind of a movement. And I like the way that they address things. So Cadence, as you know, they solve problems. They solve technological problems for companies. They say, what's your biggest problem? And we're going to help you solve it. And a lot of those things are things like creating products that use less energy, creating cars that go faster, creating, just they get to do fun stuff. But in turn, a lot of those things also, like I said, create products, creating products that use less energy helps other companies answer to their own ESG goals. So I like the way that they look at it really holistically, as this isn't just a CSR program, right? It's an investment. It's an investment in their communities where they do business. A lot of the investment went into places where Cadence has a presence. Some of it is outside of those areas, but some of it is within that area that they have a presence. And they tie it back to the work that they do. And so it's meaningful for their employees. As we know, that's a good thing for attracting talent, for retaining talent. I think they're named in consistently named in the top 100 places to work. It's a good place. And I liked what they were doing here.
Listen, I like it that you like it and you've done the research on this. It is interesting. You see a company like Cadence. I'm just going to, paraphrase, leading part of the charge and doing some really interesting stuff. Yep. Love it. Let's move to, okay, it's my favorite part of the show. It's hot or not. Mel, you picked this. I could just get in trouble talking about lazy girl jobs, and I'm gonna give the keys to you for this one. So, what is this? What's going on here?
I like to pick things that that will. I actually don't like the term either. The term was coined by some TikToker. And
I know what this. Okay, I remember this. I got you.
So really, the term, I don't like the term because I don't like the term lazy girl, but it is a term that was, sort of trending on social media. But kind of like with our fintech acronyms, it's always fun to have one that's sort of catchy and trending, and people kind of somewhat know what it is. But essentially, a lazy girl job isn't a lazy girl job. It's not for lazy people. It's just something that provides a little bit of, that term is just to get the attention. But
got my attention.
Right. Yeah, you didn't want to touch it. You're like, no, I'm not talking about this. But it's something that is, it's a job that provides some work-life balance, something where you can go to work, do your job, and have it be over. There are people who want that. There are people who don't like that, where it's not necessarily a clock in, clock out, but it's like my job is done at the end of the day. I don't know that I could work that way. My brain is just kind of always on, and I like to be able to put things aside for a little bit, think about it, take a walk. In what we do, there's so much time that we have to spend thinking about things, kind of digesting it, then go back, do some research. So I'm not sure if it's entirely for me. My sister's a flight attendant. She loves that her job is from this time to this time. And, sometimes those are really grueling hours, and it can be an overnight international flight or whatever.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a lazy job at all. But there are jobs that allow you to have, maybe you work 10 days a month, but those 10 days might be hard. So I think the term may not be the most PC term in my mind, but there's definitely, I like it better than quiet quitting. That's for sure. that
Gosh, who thought we could come up with a new modality of work here? But in the end, I like the way you said this, and I'm going to, paraphrase it that working when you want to do it, how you do it. And I actually think there's freedom in that,
Mhm.
but it is a two-way street, right? That we can't expect all employers to be able to have all these opportunities. I mean, like I always used to say, the most successful More Insights and Strategy senior analysts um, uh, are here for reasons other than having a job, and we're very flexible in the way that we do things. I hire a very mature crowd who is comfortable being very autonomous in what they do, and don't get paralysis when they're not told what to do and how to do it. Right. So in a way, I I don't think we're lazy girl jobs, but we are catering to something more than, oh, you want to be an industry analyst and be a tech superstar, right?
Mhm.
There's the quality of life, there is the work, right? Have a lot of flexibility when you do things. So I could never poke holes at somebody's desire to have a certain uh, way of life, but on the other side, folks can't be too upset with an employer who doesn't sign up for that, right? Different
Right.
jobs, different ways. So my career advice, I'm not a hashtag career advice person, but you know make sure you ask those questions and be very open and honest with your employer, right? And to the employers, you need to be very clear at what your expectations are, right?
Mhm.
And how things are going to look. Because in the end, it's going to work out for everybody. On the employer side, you spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on an employee, on ramping, getting them up to speed, investing in them for them to maybe quit because it's like, wait a second, the postcard said this, right? The postcard was like,
Yes.
it's sunny, right? We're having fun, we're having drinks on the beach, and it's like, Fire Fest,
Right.
instead. And then on the employee side, it's very clear to be upfront and say, here is the type of work experience I'm looking for, and I'll knock it out of the park for you if you can deliver that to me, and it'll be a great marriage. By the way, don't change the game on me. I am a
Right.
little offended with some companies who said, hey, look at this. It's a remote only opportunity. And then they change the game on you with it.
Yeah.
I, I can't believe employers did that. And
Yeah.
I think it's unfair that they changed the game on employees, even though legally they could. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, I called it. I called it on day one. Hey, we're going to get back to work, folks. Okay, most of us. There's going to be the pressure to do that, and why? Because I'm,
Mhm.
some uh, old Gen Xer, maybe, but it's because the tools just aren't good enough, and that's why I said in the run up that we've got years of content in the Hot Desk podcast because the tech tools aren't available yet that maximize that experience. Are you in the game? Are you out of the game? Are you snoozing? Are you energized? These things matter. Gosh, I really talked a lot about the hot or not for saying it's all yours,
That you didn't
Mel.
wanna touch it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, but hey,
You're right that there was a big change in like, oh, we're gonna be all remote or not. And there's a lot of people who are doing it, like Amazon, at least who've been
yeah,
accused of doing it without the data. HP actually just came out with a study that has some data about what people really want. And I've seen other recent studies where the the flexibility around hybrid work is not the number one thing that employees want. It's meaningful work.
yes. Oh, that's right. I knew that blew me away when I saw that.
Yeah.
That was great. Hey, gosh, we almost did a half an hour at 24 minutes. We want to thank everybody for hanging in there. We made it eight episodes. Mel, we don't have to do this just every other week. If there's a good reason to get together, then then let's do it. So thanks for
Let's
tuning in, everybody, to the Hot Desk podcast for this week. We appreciate you, and have a great weekend wherever you are on the planet. Take care.